An ivory rod, barely more than half a meter long, catalogued in a Saqqara workshop deposit as JE 43789, measured at 52.4 centimeters when recorded in the excavation inventory. Small object, long consequence.
What does a single calibrated stick do across 3 millennia? It standardizes a column, certifies a temple wall, and, in the hands of a steward, confers the right to say, "This building is correct." Welcome to Stargate Codex. I am Dr. Elias Thorn, lead historian and decoder of ancient systems. We bypass textbook chronologies to read the material and documentary registers left by workshops, temples, and initiatory networks. Prepare to decode the pattern.
Here is the central anomaly. Multiple contexts, Old Kingdom cubit rods recovered from Saqqara tomb assemblages, Sumerian metrology tablets from the Nippur archive, for example, tablet CBS 8324, and Hellenistic architectural modules reconstructed from temple foundations, converge on a narrow band of proportional values. They do not match exactly. They resonate. That repeated resonance is statistically unlikely under independent invention. I will show why, how these standards were documented and guarded, and what that conserved metrology accomplished institutionally.
Start with the artifacts. The Saqqara rod, JE 43789, appears alongside tool lists and a measuring pallet in tomb deposit notes dated in the field report to 2490 to 2350 BCE. Another calibrated rod in ivory, recorded from Giza context G7010, registers the same subdivisions, palms and fingers, that partition the larger cubit. In Mesopotamia, Nippur tablets such as CBS 8324 and CBS 8389 list linear units and reciprocal tables used for area, volume, and linear conversions, operational data for temple economies. On the Mediterranean side, reconstructions of early Greek temples cite module lengths that reduce to simple ratios of cubit class measures when tested against column spacing and stylobate dimensions.
Short aside, the excavation references I mention, field reports and tablet numbers, are provided directly in the episode notes with shelf marks and publication citations, so listeners can follow the chain of custody. This is archival work, not speculation. Look at the numbers. The Old Kingdom Royal Cubit cluster centers near 52.6 centimeters across measured rods. Converted Sumerian ratios on tablets, such as CBS 8324, produce a unit that, when expressed in modern metric terms, aligns with the same class of measure within roughly 0.5% to 1%. Hellenistic modules reconstructed from archaeological plans map to simple fractional relations of that range. A basic probability check, detailed in the comparative matrix, shows that, given the sample sizes we have, the odds of this degree of convergence arising by random independent invention fall below conventional thresholds of plausibility. See the notes for the raw series and the test script. Context matters as much as measure. The Saqqara workshop inventories pair named craftsmen with calibrated standards in the same ledger entry, and operational pairing of person and instrument. Sumerian temple account tablets attach unit lists to granary distributions and land measures. Hellenistic treatises on proportion, while later in date, echo a transmitted practice. Module is repeatedly tied to canonical lengths used in temple building. When measurement appears inside administrative and cultic paperwork, it is doing work, organizing labor, adjudicating payments, and legitimating sacred architecture. Now, read the texts. The Sumerian tablets list conversion constants and label them in contexts of storehouse accounting. The lexical signs for measure attach to both economic and ritual verbs, showing a semantic fusion. Measure is both practical and sacral. In Old Kingdom Egyptian workshop lists, the term for cubit appears alongside titles: master carpenter, temple steward, a lexical raring that underwrites custody. Later, in manuscript material attributed to early modern Rosicrucian circles and speculative masonry, the phrase master's rod recurs. Examples include a 17th-century manuscript now catalogued under BLMS Harley 5321, which allegorizes the rod while preserving detailed replication instructions. These textual threads demonstrate that measurement was taught, ritualized, and recorded.
Short beat. The rod is a credential. It authenticates. Trace transmission and a clear mechanism emerges. Operative Mason ordinances from the later medieval period formalize procedures for measuring stone, calculate wages by module, and stipulate the custody of measuring tools. Templar construction accounts, surviving ledger fragments associated with their Levantine projects and cloister works, record directed transfers of standard rods to project foremen on major builds. In the early modern period, Rosicrucian pamphlets and Masonic compendia continue the practice under symbolic language. The master's rod is both allegory and workshop blueprint. Together, those documentary layers form a continuous operational chain: custody, validation, replication.
Here is the pattern in 3 parts. 1. Template replication. Canonical lengths allow distributed labor to reproduce complex geometry with reliable results. 2. Initiatory authentication. The object certifies who may legitimately direct construction or ritual layout. 3. Intergenerational secrecy. Measures are transmitted within apprenticed, ritualized contexts, sometimes encoded allegorically, so technical knowledge remains bounded. Repeat those mechanisms across temples, guilds, Templar works, and speculative lodges, and you see the same institutional advantage preserved in different political and geographic environments.
An empirical note. The comparative matrices in the episode notes present raw measurements, unit conversions, and variance calculations so specialists can reproduce the test. I have separated measured evidence from interpretive inference. If you run the numbers, you will find the clustering persists even under conservative error bounds. That transparency is deliberate.
Apply Skye Alden's cross-referential framework, and the conclusion follows. Where metric convergence, recorded custody, and ritualized pedagogy coincide, the most parsimonious reading is institutional conservation of metrology. In other words, measurement was infrastructure. It constrained what builders could do, encoded legitimate form, and produced durable technical advantage for those who controlled the standard. This is an institutional, not metaphysical claim. Consequences for reading monuments are direct. When a temple's plan resolves to a canonical module, that is not merely aesthetic preference. It records administrative decisions about who calibrated truth and who had the authority to reproduce it. The preserved rods, the tablets, the guild protocols, taken together, compose a codex of measurement that sustained elite technical privilege across centuries. For listeners who will verify, episode notes include the Saqqara Field Report citation for JE 43789, Nippur Tablet Shelf Marks, CBS 8324, CBS 8389, with translation references, a reconstruction appendix for Hellenistic modules, and archival references for medieval ordnance fragments and BLMS Harley 5321. The comparative matrices separate raw measures from interpretive overlays so you can test the statistical claims directly. In short, conserved metrology is demonstrably more than convenience. It is a preserved technical register authenticated through institutional custody and ritual practice, functioning as material grammar of power, limiting variation, prefiguring form, and communicating legitimacy across generations. The archive never lies. The text remains.
That concludes our historical tracking of this specific anomaly within the Codex. The records demonstrate that behind the curtain of standard history lies a repeating, systemic mechanism of knowledge transmission and governance preserved across generations. We have laid out the timeline, parsed the primary source texts, and exposed the architectural blueprint. The archive remains open for those who know how to read it.